Hello, useful content creators. It's good to see you again. And this week's episode of the podcast is going to be extremely interesting. And the reason for that is because many of us experience challenges with actually creating content, which is taking the ideas that we have and then turning it into something that we can put out there in order to speak to the exact clients we want to speak to. The person I speak to this week, Kading, he talks about his personal process of content creation and how at times when he's doing other things, and in his case, it's driving, that he can actually use that time in order to create content, or at least get the ideas out into a place where he can go back later and make the content out of it. Now, I know many of us will benefit from this because many of us may have times when we're doing other things. That might be housework, it might be exercising, it might be in the car like Daniel is doing. And we can use that time in order to get some of the ideas out of our heads and into some medium or format that we can then take later and create content with it. So it's going to be a very useful episode exposing his process and all the tools that he uses. And we're going to get a chance to really look at how you can make content when you really cannot make content. This week should be great. Let's make useful content. Teaching you to make useful content so that you can build long-term relationships with the people that matter to your business. Hello and welcome to Useful Content. And today we have a brand new teacher in our Useful Content classroom, Daniel Kading. Hi, Daniel.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate you bringing me on and giving me your platform to spread some knowledge and good vibes.
Yeah, Daniel. So before we started here, we were having a bit of technical challenges, things we'd never had before on the podcast, but it's always good. It's always good to work through those things together and kind of figure them out. So we're good to go now, and we should have a good time talking about some interesting content things that you want to bring to the people. But before we do that, could you share a little bit about yourself and how you help your clients make useful content?
I live in Colorado in the US, started writing in high school. That eventually blended into a career in marketing, and that transcribed into me eventually becoming a ghostwriter and working on LinkedIn. Started building my agency and crafting stuff on LinkedIn, and it's just been a blast. I've met so many people. I'm meeting you right now. A long time ago, I remember looking up to your content, the consistency, the level of production value, like I just witnessed with you. I'm definitely impressed with your desire to make sure it looks good, which is awesome, right? What I do with my clients to help them create content much more easily, because I move more into like a overall social media role as opposed to just being a ghostwriter. I try to make sure that they have systems in place that are easy to do, that don't take up a ton of time. I worked for a couple of agencies that just wasted so much time with the client. And it's like, we could do this in a much more hands-off way that would take only 1 hour per month as opposed to like 6 hours. And it would be way less hassle. And so eventually I left those agencies and I started my own because I just wanted to do things my own way, Yeah.
So you've been writing since, since about the age of 17, since you were in high school. Yeah. So I looked at your LinkedIn posts, and 83.6% of them are either text or image and a text. Oh. And so that's the start on you. So you're by and large a writer. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I would say so. I like to mess around with video, and people have told me I'm good with video, but at my core, I'm a writer for sure.
So how has it been transitioning from being a freelancer into trying to build an agency? Has that been challenging?
Super challenging. Like, let's be honest. Yeah. Freelancing, you kind of get a pass. It's like, oh yeah, like you're just sort of figuring this out. It feels more like that. Or there's like the Peter Parker with, the guy in the original Spider-Man. He's like, yeah, freelance, it'll be great for a guy like you. And, but there's like that vibe to it, and then like you're building an agency and it's like, like you really, in my opinion, it brings a lot of pressure of like, you got to have your systems down. You got to really bring something extra, like there needs to be a set up system from the point they pay their invoice to the point that their first piece of content goes live. And those expectations need to be set and met, and you can't be as aloof about it, I feel. But yeah, I feel that it's challenged me in the right ways, and I've enjoyed it. I'm still growing, I'm still learning. And so as much as I'd love my agency to be bigger, it's still kind of small right now, but I'm getting to that place where I'm hopefully going to grow a little bit more and take it to that next step. So I'm sort of in that transitionary period of like trying to figure out my legs as an agency operator as opposed to just being the freelancer. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun and I've learned so much.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Good stuff. Having that transition, especially when you think about having to, let's just suppose, hire other people and set up all these systems, it's a massive difference. It's a massive difference from being somebody who freelances to somebody who has an agency and has all these different responsibilities. You really do need help. Like you just can't do it on your own. You do need help. And I know you're big on that in terms of getting help from other people. Yeah. So let's kind of go into some of the stuff we came to talk about today. And it was interesting when you sent me this topic, because I had no idea what you were talking about when you said creating content that matters in moments when you literally can't. And so could you expand on that? What does that actually mean? And how did you arrive at discovering how to create content in that way?
Okay, let's tell a good story, right? I got into school for writing. I wanted to become a novelist. This is well before content and social media had taken off. There weren't a lot of jobs out there, right? So I got my start in creative writing, and I had a teacher who inspired, or a professor that was like, you should get a recorder and you should bring that with you, put it in your back pocket. Whenever you have a good insight, you can record your thought. And then like I had this clunky laptop, I would go home and plug it in, and then I would take I would very slowly take that stuff off of there over a period of time. And so, but I found that when I had this transcription tool, I would record stuff into it, and I would actually save things and I would bring them back and use them, but it was a huge hassle. So once I discovered this AI tool, Otter AI, I was like, cool, I can just use this transcription tool in my meetings. Number one, that's great. Sales calls, I can go through sales calls and find really insightful things I can use in my content, or just even networking calls and coffee chats. Like there was so much stuff I could take from those transcriptions and turn into content, which is a great use of that tool. But I discovered they have the app. And so originally I was recording my phone, coming home, playing that on my computer here and doing a little like in between. And then I discovered the app. And so now I just use the app anytime I'm driving or I'm going somewhere. I'm a stay-at-home dad for most of my daughter's life. Now she's back. She's in school. She's 6 years old, but I've been a stay-at-home dad. I've been doing a lot of support at home, just driving all over the place. And so I'm always in my car, and there's just something about being in my vehicle that just makes me start thinking about stuff. And so like having that Otter transcription tool, talking into it, and like you're driving, no one's really paying attention to you. The audio is good, like it's your own little moment, right? You don't have to look at anything. You just click the button and start talking. And so like I have written weeks and months of content with just insights I get while I'm just going throughout my life. And I find, and going back to that creative writing class or in college, my teacher was like, insights always strike. Basically, the message was allow the interruptions and allow the insights to strike when they want to. And don't stop yourself from those creative moments, because usually those are the best things that you're going to come up with. And so now we have all this awesome technology and we can do that. So I'll take those Otter transcription insights and I'll just stack them. And then whenever I'm going to write my content for the week, I'll jump in there, pull those out. And then obviously I can use this stuff with my clients too. But I'm mostly talking about my own creative process at this point. But yes, that is a little insight into how that works.
I love to hear about the creative process of people, the things that allow people to be more productive, to create content that's more relevant. It seems like for me, my time when I get most inspired and get a lot of ideas is when I'm out early in the morning walking on my own. I generally on Saturday mornings, I do a 12K walk. And I know you're into walking too. That's like one of the things that you do as well. Well, I mean, at least...
I used to. I need to do more, but yes.
Yeah, you used to. At least you used to. So about to add that. And I get pretty inspired, like ideas flow at that time. And everybody has, or they can create a space in which they are inspired. And your current inspiration space is your car when you're driving about. Did you kind of discover that, or was that just by happenstance? You one day it was like, oh, if I get in the car and I start to drive, things happen.
I was trying to use some sort of like voice transcription thing with my notes app or something, and it worked horribly. And I was so tired of it messing up my words, so I just started videotaping myself. And then people were like, "Oh, you should use the video content to create videos." And I'm like, no, the audio is not very good. So I was doing that, and I was filming myself all the time, but I was just taking up so much space on my phone, and the video was basically useless, right? So I could use the video. I could have turned it into something. I could have plugged in my mic and like made it into something. But then it's like, I'm driving, right? Like I'm just trying to get the insight. And then if I want to take it from there, like when you start to think about these things in a more wider reaching way, you can take what you've written and you can easily turn it into a teleprompt and put that on your phone and read that out. So it's not that vocal thought that you had can't be like turned into a video later. I'm just a big fan of like, hooks are written in moments where lightning strikes like that. And if you don't do something with it, it could be gone, right? And I'm very neurotic like that. I'm very like scared, like very tense. Like I don't want to lose that jolt, that's that writer in me where I'm like, okay, allow the interruption, allow that to happen. And then even if I can't expand on it, just saving that quick idea and being like, okay, talk about this later. Now it's sitting in my Otter AI. It's waiting to be messed with. But I think there's just so much area to scale from there. You can take those insights and turn them into emails. You can use AI to help you do that. You can do so much more with it. You can turn it into an article. You can turn it into a Twitter thread. You can turn it into a series of individual tweets, whatever. So there's so much you can do. I can geek out for days.
All right, so let's talk a bit more in detail about what happens after you record it into Otter AI and you get the transcriptions, because you said earlier that they used to do it with your regular video recording and then convert that and then put it into Otter AI. But now they have the app, and so you record directly into the app. And so when you get back, you can take that and then turn it into something. So what does that process look like? Because I know sometimes when you speak to yourself, it might be perfect, but then there might be parts of it that you have to adjust. You have to go and tweak. Maybe the points are not cohesive. Maybe you repeat yourself. What does the process look like after you do that recording and you get back home with this on your app?
It'll come back and it'll sit for a bit, or I'll be like, I'll say at the beginning of the transcription, this is an email idea or something like that. This is an article idea, or this is a LinkedIn post idea, or this is a short form video idea. And then I'll start talking, so I can kind of tell right at the beginning what I was going for and where this should ultimately go. And it'll sit in that spot until I'm ready to pull from it. Because sometimes you are thinking through something while you're transcribing, and that is obviously not the best written stuff at the end. So if you really want to clean it up quickly, you copy it from Otter. They have a quick copy button. You come over into ChatGPT. You give the prompt based on what industry you work in. You give it a little bit of love, right? Like you don't want to just say, rewrite this. You give it some prompting based on what you do and what you're looking for. And then you say, remove all the filler words, remove all the stuff that feels unnecessary, break it down. And I always try to tell it, like, don't completely change it, right? Like change it 20%. I'll give it like a percentage so it doesn't go full ham. And then I'll have it clean it up for me. And I'll also indicate to keep the tone, to not change the language too much. And then I can pull from there, and I got a pretty nicely written, I can even prompt it to write it like an email, right? So then I can prompt from there. I can take it over into my Word doc and then or my Google Doc, and I can clean it from there and make it pretty. And then do whatever I want with it from that point. I think that there's just so much opportunity to break that down. I did used to work with a guy for a little bit. I had him going into that doc and pulling each individual insight that made sense and putting it into another doc for Twitter. And then I could schedule those as individual tweets. And then I could also take those screenshots and put them onto Instagram in the form of 3-second clips as reels. And I've been getting crazy reach from that too. So you're basically saying, like, you're taking what was a transcription, it's now become an email. That email can also become an article, little side note, but then you're also creating an entire week of X content. And then you're also creating real content. And that stuff doesn't take a lot of time. Like if you have a social media manager on that, or even an assistant, it's very, very quick and easy to do with a Canva account. and just some simple back and forth, right? So, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. I feel like there's just so much you can do. And I literally am talking about something that was a throwaway moment while I'm driving in my car. And I can do that times 10 every month.
Right. So when you get these ideas and you take it and you describe the entire process, but let's get a little bit granular. So you're taking this idea, out of Otter AI, when you record this thing for you, let's talk about you, and then we'll kind of chat about how you do it for your clients. And you take that transcript, and then you start to use it in ChatGPT. Now, this ChatGPT is the paid version, or is it the free version, or anyone will work?
Free one. I am not paying yet. I'm still getting good value out of it, so I haven't started paying.
Okay, great. So then the free version is fine. So people can take that, and you can tell. Well, then you have to learn how to write prompts. Is that something that you have to learn, or is it easier?
I think so. I think you should learn a little prompting, right? Or just to add a few details. Yeah. But yes, you do need to know how to prompt.
Right. And so you take that and you put it into ChatGPT, and then you can tell it, based upon the idea, you can tell it to remove the filler words and so you said remove the filler words and remove what else?
Anything that feels unnecessary towards the overall idea. Sometimes I'll prompt ChatGPT to think about it. I love using it for clerical stuff like that. Analyze the keywords and tell me which hashtags I should use for this post or whatever. Like, it's like, I don't want to read that whole thing and like think about it myself. Like, that's the perfect thing for a robot to do, right? So,
yeah.
But yeah, that's just a few examples. But yeah, I'll have it do that, and then afterwards, you can come back to the post and say, please read through this and give me 5 points that may need more context. And they'll give me the 5 points and they'll tell me why. And then I'm like, oh, interesting. Then I can go over to Perplexity, which is another tool which helps me research, Perplexity AI. And I can literally plug that question into Perplexity and then say, in the month of August in 2024, give it a specific timeline. So then it doesn't screw up, doesn't give me something that's 6 months old, because marketing is moving so fast, right? So then I'll take that little snippet of detail and I'll bring it back in to add more context. And then I'll even save the source so I can come back if someone's like, what are you talking about? Like, you're so full of it. I can come back in and I have the actual thing saved in my doc. And I can be like, here you go, here's the source. But yeah, that's just a few examples. But yeah.
So you refer to this as something that's infinitely scalable. So describe how that works, and how, when you're talking to your clients, that you tell them this is how they should use it over and over and over again. What does that exactly mean, infinitely scalable? Yeah,
so I find it to be very infinitely scalable for myself. And I think that's because you're testing the content in different communities too. So if you're going from voice transcription to LinkedIn, for instance, and you're posting that content, if it's going to be something that's decent, if it takes off even slightly, if it does well on LinkedIn, you get some feedback, you get it rolling. Even if it does okay, you can sort of assume that might do well in a video. Or if it does really well, you can definitely assume it would do well in a video. So now you're getting a little bit of confidence, a little bit of motivation, a little bit of audience feedback. So then I brought those really good, really high performing LinkedIn posts that really seem to leave a mark. I'll bring them over to TikTok, or I'll make a short form video and I'll do that teleprompting thing I just mentioned, and I'll teleprompt it and I'll make it, and I'll bring in GIFs and whatever fancy video that I can do. I'm not that good. I'm learning. But yeah, I'll do that. And then from there, now you have just like 4 or 5x how far you can take that post. Now you can go over to Instagram. You can share it there. You can now share it on TikTok. You can share it on even Pinterest, I believe. You can share it on Twitter, X. You can share it back on LinkedIn. So now you can come back a couple of weeks later and say, hey, you remember that post that you really loved? Check it out. It turned into a video. And so now you're kind of just like involving your audience. Like, you guys gave me good feedback. I wanted to make something special for you. So here's the visual of it, whatever, And so from there, those videos can go to like 5 different places, and they can even come back to LinkedIn. You can then take those concepts. If they do really well on those platforms, you get even more great feedback. You know what? This might be something that belongs on YouTube. Maybe I need to do something more long form. And you, instead of doing the teleprompt, just take the concept and start riffing on it and make a 5 to 10 minute long YouTube video. And then that YouTube video can become an email. It can become a blog post. It can become an article simply by taking that transcript from that video that you just produced. And now it can come back and create SEO in all these other places. I feel like it's just infinitely scalable because you're allowing yourself to repeat your ideas, to test them across multiple places with multiple communities, with many different perspectives. You know, if something does really well on Twitter or X in the land of pirates and hooligans and mean people, good chance it'll do well on LinkedIn, the place where people high five, they fist bump, they're all about camaraderie. So I'm a big believer in sort of just like feeling it out. And I know that's very specific to my process, but I would hope that people can hear what I do and sort of think, I can do that in this way and in my own way.
Yeah, I think that's what people want to hear, like what works and what has brought you success with your content. I want your opinion on something. So, you know, recently LinkedIn started their TikTok style vertical feed, right? The swiping up feed. I know you're a person who firmly believes that text posts are probably the best performing posts, or maybe you have data to support that. Because LinkedIn has started this new feed, has that changed your mind as to your approach with content at all for both you and your clients? Or do you still think that text is the way to go when you are sharing content on LinkedIn?
Great question. I feel like I went back and forth with my client at one point about this. And it's like, I'd love to just create text posts the rest of my life, but video is where the future is headed. And what I just mentioned a second ago speaks to why that's so incredibly important. You know, like you're taking what was a text idea and you are moving it into a short form format. And now you can put it everywhere. You know, like you can't do that with text just on LinkedIn. And people who are just posting text on LinkedIn are limiting themselves in regards to that. The fact that like the second I turn that into a short form clip, I can now move it to all these other platforms is the reason that I'm so, you know, pulled towards it. I also find that when I have like a phone setup like I have here and I can repurpose the short form stuff that I'm doing within a podcast setting, and I use a tool like Descript to make it super easy to clean that up and to repurpose between my phone and all that. That's super easy to use too. So to answer your question, I am definitely trying to do more video, even if I don't really want to. And I wish I could just write until the end of time. And what I love is that my writing abilities make my videos better. And I'm happy that I've spent so much time on all these other platforms. The thing that drives me nuts is when people are like, oh, I've been creating on LinkedIn forever. And now this video feature's here and I'm going to go ahead and start creating video. And then they just do the most cringe thing ever. And it's like, I really am a big believer of like walking before you run. My wife, when I started doing TikToks like 4 years ago, she was like, you should probably go spend a little time on the platform first. I was like, nah, I'm just going to reread my LinkedIn post, you know? And she's like, that's not going to work. She's like, it's not going to be good. And she was so right. It was terrible. You can go back and go all the way to the bottom of my TikTok feed. I kept it there. It's so bad, just so people can see where I came from. But yeah, it's that is so true that you should do a little research ahead of time, because you can always tell when someone has not spent enough time on a short form platform to really understand like what makes a good video, right? So that's my my little wise thoughts about short form content.
Something that you said inside of one of the posts that you had was that one of the cringiest types of posts that you ever could see is the shout out post. Right. And
yes.
Could you expand on that? I laughed at it. Could you expand on what a shout out post is and why we really shouldn't be doing any of that on LinkedIn?
Yeah. You know, in the beginning of LinkedIn, it was like we were all just sort of trying to network with each other. And I feel like our engagement maybe mattered a little bit more as well. The entire like point of a shout out originally was to like mention the top 5 to 10 people that actually have really helped you a ton. People like I have a whole list, a Rolodex in my head of people who showed up early on when I was a nobody and I had nobody talking to me, and they start commenting on my stuff, and they really do matter to me a lot. And so that was cool, right? That was wholesome. But now it's like, here are the top 10 gurus, you know, they use language like that. Here are the top 10 LinkedIn gurus that you need to follow on LinkedIn. And then they'll, you know, take a really like not well-made screenshot and then just put them across a carousel and then they'll tag them in the description of the post. And then they won't really say anything about what they did or why they did it. And it's so obvious what's being done here. And then you look at the comments, all the creators are like, hey, thanks for the shout out, appreciate the love or whatever. And it's like, you can tell they don't actually know each other. And so it's like, I'm a big fan of doing that stuff. If you actually know the person, you actually have had them really help you, and you're not just doing it to chase clout, because we all know that's what's happening. We all know that you're just trying to get that person to comment on your stuff, so then LinkedIn will start showing it to more people. You know, it's a decent enough strategy, right? But I think with time, it just starts to become very obvious what people are doing, and then they get used to it, and that's all they do. And I saw a recent creator who was just so authentic, so like themselves in the beginning, just doing things their own way. And now all I see them doing is these same types of posts. And it's like, oh man, you know, another one bites the dust, you know, like I want people to stick to what they are, feel good about who they are. And it's like, don't allow the algorithm to start dictating what you do and how you do it, because that's ultimately what happens on a lot of platforms, right? And it's the people who stay core to what they do, and they don't go down the gimmick, the hallway of gimmicks and cheap tricks. They can usually stay. I just feel like it stays longer, it feels better, and it stands out in a more impactful way.
Yeah, I agree with you. When I saw you mention that, I thought about how I would interact with those type of posts, and the fact that I think about it 1,000 times before I tag anybody. For that very reason, I don't want it to come across as if I'm trying to leverage your audience or your reach in order to put myself in a better position, or even for it even to appear that way. I think the way in which I kind of do it is if I say, okay, this is from a position of genuine gratitude for somebody having helped you, or maybe it's they shared some new knowledge that causes a mental shift, and you just want to give them thanks for how they've helped. And for me, that has to happen like 20 times before I even want to say it. Because one-off is fine, and one-off will happen. Lots of people help you one time. But if somebody is consistently delivering quality advice and helping you with content, helping you become better, at some point you're going to be like, hey, this is great. This is so great. This person is. And so they've proven themselves as somebody who you can now talk about. So even if you think about, even though they're a bigger creator than you, if you think about your reputation and think about what you're going to share with your audience, then it will slow you down as to who you share with the people, who you share as somebody who is a voice of authority, as opposed to if you just tagging every week, you're just tagging a ton of people who have a bigger creator, more engagement. And that, for me, kind of rings untrue for me personally. Yeah.
I completely agree. Yeah. And I think there's good ways to do it too. And you can look at it from a selfish point of view too. If you tag people and they don't respond, they don't comment, they don't do anything. I think Richard Vanderblom tested this. And if they don't do anything with the first hour and a half, they don't react and they don't comment, that post is going to tank. So like, even if you do tag them, there's a good chance they may not see it, and they may not see it quickly enough. And so you could just think of it from a selfish point of view. Like, I, number one, don't want to be seen as a clout chaser. And number two, I don't want this post to tank. And if you're truly in the network of somebody that has been helping you, then you're connected and you should be able to send that DM. If you're not able to send them a DM with that post and say, hey, I mentioned you, you can mention their name. Just don't tag them. And if you want to come back in the future a few days later and hit edit and tag them, maybe do it then, but don't do it right away. And then I would just mention their name and then send it to them in a DM and say, hey, I mentioned you in this post. If you want to check it out, feel free. And then that takes the whole edge off. You don't have to worry about the algorithm shafting you, and you don't have to worry about that person thinking you're a clout chaser. And then you can also go down to the bottom and comment and say, did you guys notice how I didn't tag so-and-so? That's because I'm not a clout chaser. I'm the real deal. You know, like, you can go down there and brag about it, and then people would be like, maybe I shouldn't do that either. You know, I just think it's a way more respectful way to go about it. And that person's going to appreciate it. And then you're also going to start up a conversation, and they're going to start seeing your content more often too. So there's a lot of benefits.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I hadn't thought about it that way in terms of sending them a DM first and telling them. That assumes that obviously you're connected to the person, because if you're not, then it's
have they really helped you? Have they really helped you? You haven't had a DM conversation. I mean, probably, right? But like, maybe it's not the time then, right? So, or if anything, you send a connection and then you send them the post. But whatever, I just think being holistic about it, really thinking about how things come off is the new like fashionable way of handling things, right?
But yeah, there are people who actually exist like that, who do things for the real reasons and not just because they want to. I know we kind of going off on a tangent here, but it's something that really bothers me about LinkedIn when I see it, and I don't talk about it because I don't think it's worth talking about, but it's something that bothers me in terms of, if you want to manipulate the system, there is a blueprint as to how to do that. If you wanted things to go a certain way for you, you could double down and do it exactly that way in order to get the reach and be in the places that you want to be. And I don't know if I think people realize that, but it's just a lot of work. And then it's very tiring because then you are not building in a way that is genuine to you. And you're not being who you're supposed to be on the platform. You turn into someone else for the sake of getting recognized, for the sake of reach, for the sake of being, your name is being called in this group of people. And so you kind of betray the reason you're there in the first place, which is to help people who are genuinely attracted to how you can help them. I see it. I see people do it. As you said, you described someone earlier, they sacrifice their authentic way of building because they think it's taking too long, or, and they do it that way. So I think that's something that really bothers me a lot.
Yeah. Or just, start sharing memes and GIFs all day long, which, is a strategy. But at a certain point, it's like, I saw a guy the other day post something that was not a meme and was not a GIF, and I didn't even feel like reading it because you are priming your audience to expect something from you, right? And so if you get, if you get started with Descript and you're clipping out every single last pause in between your sentences, if you bring over a normal video where you have some pauses and you don't have those, there's a chance they may slip off because you prime them to be used to you being super fast and super quick. So I think, people become used to what you offer and how you do it. And, there's certain people like Todd, I can't think of his name, but he's big
Clouser.
in the,
Clouser.
There we go. Yeah. Todd. He does these long form TikTok videos that I would never get away with. Right. Like, and he will just sit there and just talk. And his comments are always like, dude, get to the point or whatever. And he's like, these videos are about insight and context and detail. Get used to it. and I love that. And I'm like, and so now I'm like, cool, I will totally watch a Todd video for a minute plus because I know he's funny. I know he's insightful. I know he's got the credentials and I trust him. Right. So I think if we have that trust established, the attention that we pay all of a sudden becomes worth it. Right. Because we know we're going to get an outcome that is worth something. And people know when they read my stuff, I'm going to make them laugh. I'm going to make them think about something. I might even make them feel a little called out. And they also may get to the end and be like, you know what? I don't even care because that was enjoyable. And now I want to comment, or hopefully, or even if they just go about their day. Right. But like, I know that I was able to hold their attention. And even if your reactions are not growing and your comments aren't growing, that ghost audience is showing up and engaging with it.
And so now let me go back to the question I was asking earlier. Now that we set all this context about how to be authentic on LinkedIn. And I'm wondering if, as you become more focused as to what you were delivering to your ideal client, if you were scared that your engagement was going down, or did it on the end that we can't see actually help the business?
I struggle to know how to answer that question. But I think that overall it has helped. I think it has helped a lot because I used to have a lot of terrible sales calls. Like I used to get in sales calls with people who had no idea what I was doing. They had no idea even what like LinkedIn was. So I think I've gotten to a point where like I've educated my audience enough to that point where they know what to expect from me. And I've also honed like my Calendly tool, like I have several questions in there that are meant to vet people so they don't sign up if they aren't that person. So there's some other like structural things I've done. But yes, I have become more sharpened, and part of me feels somewhat sad about that. I'm like, Not as many people see it, but the right people I feel are seeing it. And when I check my demos and I see my percentages in my LinkedIn posts, I know that I'm speaking to the right individual and they are seeing it. And I think that's sort of like the crux of content. It's like once less people start showing up, you know that you're not just talking to everyone. And I was definitely talking to everyone like 80% of the time. It was all tofu content, top of funnel. Now, like I think like 60 to 80% of my content is bottom funnel, BOFU, and like middle funnel, talking to like other networking people who are building their businesses. And then just a little bit, I'm bringing in that tofu. But yeah, I think it's changed a lot. I can't say for sure if it's the best because I do miss those days, right? I do miss those days of really viral or more viral content. I can't say it's viral, but more engagement and more reach. But I think LinkedIn has changed too a lot, right? So, yeah. And we have to change with it. And rather than sitting here and throwing my fists up, I'm doing more video. I'm always doing more podcasts. I have an email newsletter now. You know, like there's always other stuff going on that I'm trying to integrate into and figure out.
Yeah, I think people have to be honest with themselves and be able to admit that, you know, okay, so here's the deal, right? Here's what I think, all right? And I'm happy you said that. I think sometimes, even though we say the numbers don't matter, it actually does matter to us personally. Like when you know, if we do a post and it's getting like 200 engagements or 300 engagements, and then we do a post and it only gets 10, that is a significant drop off in our brains, and we get affected by that. We're wondering, what did we do wrong? Was it the topic? Was it the way I said it? Was it the time of day? We begin to analyze all of these different things about the post because we're chasing that particular result, that outcome. And over the years in LinkedIn, because I remember there was a time I was looking through my old posts and I was looking at what got the most engagement ever. Turns out it was a personal post, right? And if I wanted to get more engagement, I could literally come up and with this personal post. Now, the post I did was about my wedding anniversary, and there was a story about it and all those different things.
Oh, yeah.
And I decided I'm just never going to do that again. I'm just never going to do it. My anniversary was last month. Crickets, nothing. And so people tend to chase the feeling of this type of engagement or what could be publicly seen as engagement, but they throw away the goals of what is my content really supposed to be doing for my business. And I think because of how LinkedIn has changed, as you mentioned, that creating the content for business results, let's put it that way, and not just sales content or performance content, but even brand building content, is more meaningful than trying to just get the responses from people. That will always make much more sense. So it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, I think.
Yeah, like that, I can't agree more. And it's so incredibly exhausting to live that life of like riding the wave of the algorithm. Not only does it hurt, but you end up like becoming something you didn't want to become. And you end up chasing things you didn't want to chase. And so it's like, I'm heavily focused on that system of making sure that you are taking something that is a throwaway insight on your drive to the grocery store, and you are taking the most minimal effort possible and getting the highest amount of result out of it. So then in that process, if you are getting those lulls and those dips, it doesn't matter. Look at Stephen G. Pope. Like I mentioned, that guy doesn't care if he gets a video with 200 views because every single post he puts up is throwaway, and he has an automated system building it. So when he gets those winners, then he can get excited, and everything else is just consistency. And his system becomes the flex. His ability to stay going becomes the flex. And at the end of the day, most of business is just, it's like Survivor, right? The last person standing. Like you need to be there on the island at the last bit and pushing through. And so I feel like you don't have to be the best. You just need to last the longest until you are one of the only few in the competition. Because I remember there's only so many people from 4 years ago that are still here. Having that system in place, and then also focusing on rereading your posts and being proud of it. You know, like I know my clients look at their stuff and they feel like they wrote it. They look at it and they're like, yeah, because it came from their brain, but like magically I made it appear in their feed, and maybe there's a little bit of me in there, but it's them, right? And they approved it, and it's their say. So I think there's something to be said about enjoying what you are putting out, and you don't risk that if you just continue to focus on the stuff that matters to you. I still continue to talk about Breaking Bad. I talk about cinema. I talk about movies. I talk about mental health. I talk about my struggles with my parents growing up. Like, I think there's just so much that you can discuss. But then I also put out hard-hitting content that's meant to get people to buy from me. So I think you can mix it up and people will understand. And if you're trying to sell, it's okay if it doesn't get a lot of reach. It's not meant to. It's meant to get you booked meetings. No one's going to see that. No one sees your booked meetings, right? Unless you show them, right? So that's what it leads to. And that's a ghost audience type maneuver. I just got a booked meeting the other day, and it came from someone I haven't spoken to in a long time, that came from a cold DM outreach. And he just happens to keep seeing my stuff in his feed, and I keep showing up. And eventually he's like, oh yeah, I need to schedule that with Dan. So that stuff happens all the time, and you just never know when it's going to happen. But
yeah, that's great. Are there any last points you would love to share with the people about either what we started talking about, which is the being able to create content on the fly, or when you're literally not able to, and using AI tools, or the last things that we were talking about is what are the best ways to create content on the LinkedIn platform before we close off?
Oh yeah. I think just going out there and paying attention to what people are doing. There is something to be said for just doing that daily research and allowing what other people are doing to sort of influence what you're doing. Don't be so hard-headed. Instead, be super open-minded, because I didn't know how to skateboard when I first got started skateboarding. And after 10 years, I was doing flip tricks down stair sets. I wouldn't have done that if I didn't, how did the Wright brothers learn how to fly? They didn't go out there and get a bunch of money and like draw up some sketches. They went out there and they looked at the birds and they watched the way they flew until they figured out how to create that for themselves in the form of an engineering marvel that changed the entire world, right? So we need to look at our content the same way and have that sort of playful mentality of like, when my daughter wanted to learn how to do art, she watched me and then she started doing it. I think we need to do the same thing and not have an ego walking into it and just be like, what are other people doing and how can I create something similar in my own way?
Some people may want to get in contact with you based upon what you shared here today. Where can they find you online?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Daniel Kading, with the lightning bolt and the orange picture. Feel free to DM me. I don't have a website right now, in between stuff. But yeah, or you can follow me on any of the other platforms, on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Brand with Dan, as well as X, Twitter at Brand with Dan. All the same across there with the same picture. But yeah, feel free to reach out. If you got any questions, I'm happy to help. If you mention this podcast and mention your name, I'll totally go over and above to assist you if you need anything. Or if you want to work with me, let me know. And I'm happy to help you in that regard as well. So yeah, appreciate you bringing me on. And it's been great to talk to you. And it's crazy after all these years to end up here. So thank you for having me, Juma. I really do appreciate it.
No worries, man. Thanks for reaching out. And thank you, students, for being a part of our Useful Content podcast, Useful Content Classroom. Dismissed. And we're clear. So let me ask a question. Why did you think it was important to have the same photograph or same picture everywhere?
So people who know it's me. Yeah, I mean, in school, I learned about ICP, ideal client, or no, not ICP. It was some other acronym, but yeah, consistency across all of your branding, so people know how to spot you. Then it's like, oh, I know that guy. Then I have to see my name.
Yeah. I recently, because I agree, by the way, I think that is what everyone should do. I think people are too much into being exciting about how they appear on different platforms. I mean, the only one for me that's different is Facebook. And of course, there's a reason for that, is because, that is like locked off from the business world. And I know you have issues with Facebook. Yeah, I feel the same
way about my Facebook. Yeah.
You have issues with Facebook. But all of the places that I want commercial pursuits, my images is the same. And I think that's a wise thing to do. So it's good to hear that you do the same thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
it's
sure.
all
Consistency. Good. I tell my clients to do the same thing too, even if they sometimes don't. But
they always listen. So you can change
Yeah.
your photographs. No, I love this picture and I love this one, and they don't always
Yeah,
listen.
yeah. It's like, what? Yeah, you want to become a public speaker? Well, put your public speaking picture on every single platform so people see you that way. I wanted to become a manager when I worked in retail. So what I do, I started showing up to work with a polo on and a button shirt. I tried to look nicer, so they envisioned me as the manager. So you got to look the part sometimes, right?
Yeah. You have to live in.
But I do have to run. I got a meeting I got to get to, but I do really appreciate it, and I hope the audio works out and everything goes smoothly. So I'm crossing my fingers.
Yeah, no worries, man. All right, take care. We're talking.
All right,
platforms.
Juma. Thanks so much. You have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye. The Useful Content Podcast is brought to you and produced by Relate Studios. You can see the work we do at our website, relatestudios.com. If you like what you've heard on the podcast today, please follow, leave a rating, and come back next week for another great episode. And if you want to get more useful content in between that, you can follow me, Juma Bannister, on LinkedIn. See you soon in the Useful Content Classroom. But until then, don't forget to make useful content.